Welcome back. And some disturbing figures out of National Treasury today. It says South Africa's unemployment rate could reach 40% due to the impact of COVID-19. Some businesses, as you well know, have shut down. Others have indicated they might not be opening after the lockdown. Let's bring into this conversation economist Dr. Azar Jammine from Econometrics, who joins us now to talk about how this virus is likely going to impact on the country's economy. Dr. Jammine, good afternoon to you. Treasury says 40% this afternoon. The South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry last week was saying as much as 50%. What's your reading?
Much would depend really on the kind of scenario that one paints with regard to how this COVID virus is going to pan out. There is a lot of uncertainty as to how quickly it's going to disappear. If you paint a doomsday scenario that says that this thing is going to last for many, many months, if not years, and that we are likely to see a resurgence of spikes from time to time, they will necessitate returns to lockdowns from time to time, and that will be devastating for economic activity. And if you assume that scenario, then you do get to a figure of 50% unemployment. However, the more conventional scenarios that are being forecast right now have the virus kind of be spreading through to July, August, September, and then hitting a peak and coming down, so that by the early part of 2021, we start really returning back to a normal economy. If you assume that kind of scenario, then the damage is not quite as severe, and it's still severe, very severe, and your unemployment rate goes not from 30 to 50%, but only from 30 to 40%. Either way, it's an awful scenario.
Let's park unemployment to one side. It's not just that, but we also know that many firms are also cutting wages right now, which also has a devastating impact on the economy.
Well, this is the big trade-off that one looks towards in terms of analyzing the impact of this virus. To the extent that many people may still be able to retain their jobs if they accept wage cuts right now, which also enables their businesses for which they work to survive, then your unemployment rate won't rise as rapidly as might otherwise have been the case, but clearly your consumer spending will be negatively affected and economic growth generally will be negatively affected. But I would suspect that that is probably a preferable outcome than one which sees more and more people on the streets and those who do have jobs doing very well. One would prefer to see many more people taking wage cuts and retaining their jobs and businesses not going under than businesses going under and many people losing their jobs because no one wanted to accept a wage cut at all.
Patently, there is no silver bullet, and whichever way you look at it, Dr. Jammine, we're all in for the long haul. But it does beg the question as to how the country has got to start thinking in terms of recovery and whether current aid measures that are in place by government are sufficient.
You've got to bear in mind that the current measures are really aimed at just alleviating short-term pain. They do not go to the heart of our economic problems. Something that South Africans are inclined to forget is that the economy was in dire straits even before the COVID virus really took hold. And that was because there were significant structural weaknesses in our economy. The big problem that we face is that there is no unanimity about how to deal with these structural weaknesses. There's one school of thoughts that says government must intervene even more heavily and dictate everything that goes on in the economy. And there's the other school of thought that says the real problem that we've been having with our economy is that government has had far too big a role to play, and that it should allow entrepreneurship and the market system itself to dictate as to how to spread this around, to alleviate the pain.
Talking about the alleviation of pain, then, to what extent will the ability to unlock financing from the likes of the International Monetary Fund go towards assisting the short-term situation? How much time does that buy us?
I think it buys us very, very precious time. And the beauty about this is, without that funding, government would have to go to the markets to borrow the money. And at the moment, long-term interest rates in South Africa are in the region of 10, 11%. That's very expensive, and that would increase our debt servicing costs and crowd out our ability to spend on education, healthcare, and the like. Here you have a wonderful opportunity to borrow money at 0 or 1% with very few strings attached, if any, because these loans are being made available with the specific objective of trying to help developing countries cope with the COVID virus. They are not of the kind of structural adjustment programs that have got the IMF a bad name in certain circles, where the IMF imposes its desires on how a country's economy should be run. In this case, there is no such precondition, and you can get this money at very, very little interest. And for a few years, my goodness, that will save us a very precious time and very precious money, and allow us a little bit of breathing space to be able to devote to service delivery and things like education and healthcare and social welfare and the like.
Dr. Jammine, just a quick one. We know within the next couple of weeks the Finance Minister is going to present an adjustment budget. What does he need to say to mitigate impact?
Well, unfortunately, what he says is going to elicit opposition whichever way he goes, because he's caught in the middle between this ideological debate that has carried on for decades in South Africa with regarding more government intervention or more market-oriented solutions. And for the outside world and for investors, they would love to see the finance minister do what we've been calling for, many of us have been calling for, and that is to restructure state-owned enterprises, if anything, to sell some of them off, fight corruption and state capture, start concentrating on doing more to invest in the infrastructure of the country rather than pay an ever-bloated civil service higher and higher salaries. Focus on developing educational outcomes, especially in mathematics and science, to prepare ourselves for an increasingly technologically intensive global environment, and to try and improve the industrial relations between workers and their employers, as well as just stop regulating so heavily in such a way that is absolutely crimping small business activity and preventing it from thriving in a way that would enable the country to create the number of jobs that are needed.
Well, that is a refrain that we've heard before, haven't we? From Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jammine, as always, thank you for the insight.